It's tech time with Aaron Smith. Da-da-da. It's tech time with a guy with car ADD. He's got so many cars.
Okay, so today we're going to be working on swapping out knuckles on an S chassis. So basically, this is a 240SX. It's an S13. It doesn't have S13 rear subframes in it anymore, or a subframe in it anymore. It's swapped over to an S14, S15 style. The reason you do that is the geometry is a little different on the S14 stuff, so it's better depending on who you talk to and what you're doing. But mainly it's a little bit wider. I wanted it for the width and the geometry, but mostly the width. But that doesn't really matter for what we're doing. I was just explaining what's on it. So this is the knuckle that's on the car right now. We've already done one side, and we have loosened up a lot of the stuff on the car already. So when we go to do it, if it looks super loose, it's because we loosened it before, so we didn't have to do it for the camera. But anyway, the difference between an S13, S14 style knuckle and a Z32 upright is obviously one's made of aluminum and one is made of much heavier material. This guy right here probably weighs double. The other difference, if you look at it, or one of the other differences, is the kind of rear mount on the coilover, the lower mount. A Z32 uses a fork type that slides over like this. It's actually up here, and it goes like this, but it slides over like this. On a 240, it would be an eyelet on the bottom, and it would go over like that, and then a nut would go over it. So that's why we're doing this. The actual reason I'm doing this is a friend needed normal eyelet style KTS lowers and had these ones, and I had spare Z32 uprights. So I traded him mounts so he could get his coilovers on, and I just decided it'd be okay because I had these uprights laying around, so I just decided to throw them on the car. Another thing you have to look at when you're doing the swap is if you look at the ball joint, if you notice, this is much bigger than this. So the ball joint holes on the actual uprights are different. So you have to buy this, it's called like a Conical Spacer. It's an actual Nissan part. It slides in here, and then it gives you the same taper on your rear lower ball joint. You have to have these guys. You can't run the ball joint without it, because obviously it would just like clack around in here and that'd be super bad. But anyway, so other little differences, like the Z32 has this little dust seal and stuff in here. This guy doesn't, so you can pop it off. There's a little part you can pop off the actual axle stub, and just little other things. But mainly, people mainly normally do this because of the power of lightweightedness. I don't really care. Like I said, I just kind of did this to help a friend. But it gives me a chance to work on stuff and make a little video, so that's what we're doing. Like I say, I'll mention it again. A lot of this stuff is already loose. I didn't want to have to sit here and mess with it for the camera. But we'll start by doing the ball joint. If you come over here on this side. So the ball joint goes in right here to the knuckle. When you do ball joints, like you already saw that it's a taper on the end, and it fits in here, and it ends up being kind of a press fit once you tighten this down. So you loosen this guy off, and he's really, really hard to get loose. You can take a pry bar, and you can come in here, and you can pry it a lot. You can take a fork, like a pickle fork, and come in here and hit it, but you'll end up hurting the ball joint or like bending stuff. So really, the best way to do this, and this is like ball joints, like tie rod ends, whatever, is you want to put an impact on this. And then by impact, I don't mean like an impact gun. You want to actually put a physical impact on this. So you'll take, in this instance, the easiest way to do it is take a hammer and put a hammer on it, or something else like a punch or whatever. A hammer is just easy because it's a convenient handle and everything. And you hit it with another one. You can do it with a hammer by just swinging, but obviously there's things you hit, tear it up. So you just come in here, once this nut is loose, which like I said, a lot of this stuff is already loose. And you can also have a friend on the other side just putting a slight bit of pressure because it helps it pop it out. But you come in here with a hammer, put it on here, and then hit this hammer with the other hammer. Actually, I'm gonna swap these. Easier this way. And it's kind of weird because I'm offset for the camera. But anyway, do this, and then it'll pop loose. which is funny. We've already done this on this one, and I was kind of just doing it for show, but it's already stuck back in there. So let's see if I can get it to come loose. Here, let me get that shorter. Here, back out a little bit. All right, yeah. So it is loose. You can see it's loose now. All right. So now, and another thing to note when you're doing this, when you go to take this nut off, if you look, there's cutouts on these axles. Oops. There are cutouts on these axles that make it easier to get to the nut. If the nut was lined up with this guy right here, it makes it really hard to get out. But if it's in this little cut, which I don't know if you can really see that very well, then it makes it, or it just gives you space to get this out. So that's a nice little trick to know. And then I'm just gonna set all our stuff over here. All right, so now that that's off, the next thing you'd wanna do, which you don't have to do this next, but it's good to go ahead and get it out of the way, is take your caliper off. Once you have your caliper off, then you can take your brake disc off, and then you can take everything. When you take your caliper loose, remember that you don't want the caliper to be hanging from the brake line. If the caliper hangs from the brake line, if there's any frays or anything in the brake line, it could make them worse and strip it, or it could damage them and just cause premature wear or a failure while you're driving, which would obviously be very bad. So I'm going to pop this guy off. And then I'm just gonna kind of shove it up in there and let the A arm, the lower control arm, hold it. Okay, now just wiggle this guy. He should slide off. And you can kind of just shove it up in there for right now. And then that allows your disc to come off. You can sit that there. All right, so now we can go ahead and loosen up the arms. Take them off. There's one there. There's this top one. And all these arms are SPL arms. Obviously, if they're factory arms, they'd look a tiny bit different. These are adjustable arms. Just so if you're looking at your car and it looks different, that's why. And there's the third one. All right. So now we have the arms loose. Flashlight is now dead. Super high quality. All right, so everything's loose, minus your actual axle. So you would normally take, and this is a 36, by the way. You normally take this guy, and it would be pretty tough to get him off. It's a 36, it's really tight. It kind of takes a lot of effort, but like I said, we've already broken it loose. Yeah, so that guy comes off. There's normally a washer. I didn't put it back on there just for the video. Okay, so now you've got to get this thing off and then get the axle out so that you can take it off. So basically it's got to come off the ball joint and the axle has to slide out, and then we'll basically just have it in our hand. I am going to pull this little guy over here. All right, simple as that. Okay, so now we're gonna take this over there, and there's 4 bolts here that hold this hub on. So this hub is gonna come off and go on the new upright. So we have to take these 4 bolts out and then transfer it over there. So now that you got those bolts out, you can go about trying to get this guy out. Sometimes it's super duper easy and it comes right out, and other times it's a nightmare. We're gonna hope for the first, not the latter. You see, we're started to get some movement on it. Now, kind of rock it, hopefully. This is a smaller one. There we go. All right, so this is your hub assembly. When you buy like 4 to 5 lug hubs, this is what you're doing. You'd have to go all the way down to this point, and then instead of having 4 lugs on here, it would just have a 5 lug setup. So you'd have to do these and then swap out your disc brake rotors, and you would have 5 lug. So anyway, that guy, it's awesome over there. Put this guy in here, and there's no direction on it or anything. It doesn't really matter. Just goes in here. It's too far. Line those guys up. I'm actually going to finish tightening these with air so we get a little more force behind it. I left the dust cover off. Honestly, they just kind of get in my way normally. That was weird. Okay, now you want to double check that you don't have it cocked or anything. There's no weird gaps or anything at all, that the bolts are all sticking out about the same on the back side. And if you're satisfied with it, then we'll take it back to the car and let's swap out gloves. On a scale of 1 to 10 on usefulness for this kind of swap, and I guess like performance per dollar and time spent and everything else, this one ranks pretty low in my opinion. You're not going to get a ton of benefit. Obviously, anything that's unsprung weight that you can reduce is going to be a good thing. But for the average person, it's just kind of it's a lot of work for not a huge gain. Another thing you have to look at when you do this is if you hit anything or whatever, it's probably easier to find 240 uprights or knuckles than it is to find Z32 aluminums. So that's a thing too, because we do speed on our cars and everything, that you might end up with parts that are harder to find. I mean, obviously they're not like hen's teeth or anything, but they are probably a little more rare than just every other guy that's got stock 240 stuff laying around. So one of the things I was saying is that has a little dust seal and the S13 stuff doesn't. So you can pop this guy off. You're gonna have to go a different angle or something to see it. And it's just kind of hard to do, honestly. honestly where I need a second pair of hands sometimes. Let's see if I can. That was a little easier than prying. Okay, so while you have everything off, you can inspect everything, make sure it's good, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, when you're done, if you have adjustable stuff, you'll also have to double check all your measurements in case like the mounts are, you know, a little bit different or something. You know, it's all factory stuff, so it should all be the same, but that doesn't mean that you didn't get, you know, Nissan was produced it on a Friday or something for all you know. So you can see what I was talking about, where this guy wouldn't work without that guy. So, oh, actually, before I do this, I'm gonna clean this up a little where that guy was riding. And this is where multiple hands would really help a lot. Always remember when you're using these little wire brush guys that you should have some sort of glasses on, because they will fly out and murder your eyes. I'm not going to go crazy on that, but I wanted to just clean it up a little bit more before I stuck it in there. All right. So, get all that dust off of that guy. All right, so now from here, everything is just a reverse of the procedure to take it off. So we're just going to start by putting the arms back on. This arm right here, if you notice, has a curve to it. It's going to go on towards the front of the car to go up on there, which I have to pull this back down because it's got to be. There you go. Next that'll easier get there. This way with this guy. Have the nut out the back. You know what? I made a mistake. This guy goes up here. The longer bolt goes in the top middle mount. He goes up here. And this shorter bolt goes down here. All right, so ball joint is in there. It's got its little cup. This bolt, and this bolt are all on. Now we just gotta tighten them up. a light show. Come on, thing. Oh, that's better. Well, that guy just really wants to cooperate, doesn't he? Whatever. Okay, so those are tight. I will come back and tighten those down without the impact leader. Gonna put the ball joint nut back. And like I said, it's lined up to where I can use that little indentation to put it back on. Not sure if you can really see right now since we lost all the lights. Same thing, I'm gonna come back after the video and finish tightening all this stuff. All right, so come back over here. Now at this point, you got all your arms tight, got your ball joint tight, pop this guy back on here, then take and put your caliper back on. So whenever you go to put a caliper back on, come to the side so you can see. Whenever you put a caliper back on, sometimes it's pinched off like this, and I've seen people just hammer them on and they destroy everything. You can actually just manipulate it normally, as long as no one's hit the brakes. If you hit the brakes while stuff's off, then you're gonna have a bad time. So anytime you have a caliper off, don't hit your brakes. But you can kind of just widen it up like that, put it on the edge, and then just walk it on like that. All right, same thing, I'm gonna come back and finish tightening this. So at this point, you would take your washer, put it on here, then you'd put this big nut here, and you would impact it down until you got it tight, and then you would put a torque wrench on it and torque it down. Again, I'm not going to do that just for time constraints and everything. Remember that you have a cotter pin that you need to put here and a cotter pin that you put on the ball joint. If you don't put those on, you run the risk of obviously these guys backing out. You could lose your ball joint, which would be super bad. You could lose this guy off, which would be super bad. You don't want to do either of those things. So remember to run your cotter pins. And at this point, we're ready for this lower mount, which you would just put on here, spin it all the way up until it gets up there to the collar, tighten the collar down to it, and put it on here and put a bolt through. And that's it. After you're done with that, obviously, like I said, when you set the car down, you might be a little off on your alignment. You might have to play with some stuff. If you can't do it yourself, obviously, you can take it to a shop. Yeah, put your wheels on and go drive. And that's about it. If you have any comments or questions or concerns or anything, obviously hit me up. Like I said, all these videos are just me working in my garage trying to motivate myself to work and then help some people out. But thanks for watching.